What are you doing?
Well, last night, I read this fact that our tongue does not really rest on our lower jaw. It rests on the upper jaw.
Fascinating. Can we get on with it?
Well, hi guys, I'm Gunjan Saha and Roshan and I together we break down the biggest highlights from India's growing startup ecosystem. Alright, so let's talk about India's first online privacy law. On last Wednesday, I think the Parliament ratified the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. And this bill regulates how personal data can be used by private or government entities. And it also introduces concepts such as the data fiduciary and data principle, and also emphasizes on user consent. Right now, this bill, before it got passed, it had gone through multiple rounds of iterations. The body was open to comments from the public, but that also had its own controversies. With all the progress that we have been making in the digital front, I think this law was long time coming.
Yeah.
But I think considerable time has also been spent on deliberating the pros and cons of this. And right now that the law is out, I think we'll be soon seeing a lot of changes happening in the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a long time coming, right? I mean, I think the ball started rolling in 2010 after the introduction of Aadhaar. There was the court case, a famous court case where the right of privacy was recognized as a fundamental right by the courts, right? And thereafter, this bill has been mooted and has gone through God knows how many amendments, right? Countless amendments, deliberations, and so on and so forth. Wonderful that it finally got passed in the parliament and is now an act. Unfortunate that the opposition members, chose to sit out of this, because I think something like this is so important, because we've seen the amount of digital footprint that each of us have has grown tremendously, right? Manifoldly over the years. And something that governs that, right, the essence, which is data, is very, very important. So I think two or three aspects. One is that individuals have a greater leverage in terms of how their data is going to be used, who can use their data, and for up to what time, for what purpose, etc. Right, so all of these folks, whether it's Facebook, Google, etc., they have to reinitiate and they have to ask for consent again, right? And failing which, as you mentioned, 250 crores or $30 million, up to which the fines can be imposed, right? And the second thing is, we have some basic equivalent of a GDPR, for instance, right? And so if you're a global entity, you will be less skeptical working with, an Indian company, right? Because it's not a free for all. We do have regulation. We have some guardrails in terms of, how do we conduct business, and so on. So it provides a greater assurance to those folks. The third thing which you brought up as well is the data transfer and data flow outside of the country, right? I mean, we've seen, especially with everything that's happened geopolitically, how important data is, right? I mean, so again, governance on that front, in terms of what data can and cannot be used and where it has to reside, is absolutely important. There are a few concerns about this as well. I mean, one of the concerns is that there are exceptions that the government has made for itself. Well, I mean, every country, every sort of union makes exceptions for it. I mean, in fact, GDPR itself has about 16 provisions or more, right, where the data can be accessed by the government in case of national security, defense, and so on, right? That is what it is. And the second concern is in the case of RTI, right? No, right to information. And if there is an RTI about a government servant, for instance, right, does their right to privacy override the right to information or not? I mean, again, these are concerns that are being negotiated at this point of time. The data protection bill provides safety for those folks, right? And which, again, we do have some sort of rights in terms of government processes and public servants and so on, right? So again, difficult question for sure, right? And the third is, I think the biggest sort of drawback and concern legitimately is the fact that AI has not been addressed, artificial intelligence. Now this, I think, will most potentially be covered by the Digital India Act that's going to come up later, right? But this is again something that governments across the world are grappling with, the consequences of AI, with all of this fake news and all of the manipulation and whatnot, deepfakes and so on and so forth. But I think hopefully that will be covered under the ambit of Digital India. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the provisions of these laws will keep on evolving over time because we had an act which was like more than 30 years old, and we know that technology changes every 5 years. So yeah, a lot of these rules will keep evolving, but the act also lays down the guidelines for setting up the data protection authority, whose primary objective will be to enforce the rules which are outlined in this bill. So yeah, I think the success of this implementation of the bill will highly rest on the efficacy of this data protection authority.
Yeah. No, but the other important aspect is, what the minister, Mr. Vaishnav, has said, that this will be a digital first design. Right. So you mentioned, that it might be cumbersome for companies to sort of comply and so on. But hopefully with this, digital first mechanism, it might be relatively easier. Yeah.
Alright, folks, there are a lot of videos and content out there which kind of deep dives into the implications of this bill. If you want these videos to come up in your timeline, please like this video so that the algorithm recommends those videos to you. Moving on, last week a memorandum of understanding was signed between India and Trinidad and Tobago to share the India Stack, which is a set of digital public goods that enable identity, data and payment services. The India Stack comprises open APIs that allows various entities to access and use data securely and efficiently, such as Aadhaar, UPI, eKYC, and DigiLocker. The MOU aims to leverage India Stack for joint digital progress, knowledge exchange, and scaling local startup ecosystems in both the countries. Along with Trinidad and Tobago, India has earlier signed partnerships with countries such as Armenia, Sierra Leone, Suriname, and Antigua and Barbuda to promote digital cooperation and innovation. I think this is a fantastic news because at its very core, the India Stack is set to lower the cost of transactions so that 1/5 of the world population has access to digital goods and services. And we have seen that how India has, we spoke about this, India is now becoming a torchbearer for digital progress, and us exporting the India Stack, I think, will really help boost cooperation among countries.
What is heartwarming is India's outreach to all of these Caribbean islands and the smaller countries. And that has been a sort of a highlight, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. Which is why India and, the Prime Minister also has such adulation in these countries. We definitely should help these folks out. I mean, of course, Trinidad and Tobago, in fact, the Caribbean islands have such a large, number of people of Indian origin, right? I mean, if you followed cricket, Shivnarayan Chanderpaul and Ramesh Sarwan and so on, right? So fantastic. I mean, we get to sort of road test how the stack, works in other sort of environments. Yeah, I mean, in terms of trade and whatnot, I mean, this will just make it a lot more simpler, right? By the way, I mean, last week, again, India and UAE transacted in local currencies, right? So India bought crude with the Indian rupees, basically, right? So the India Stack certainly helps in terms of ease of business and accessing these markets as well, right? I mean, it creates a kind of an unfair advantage to Indian companies. And it's a good exchange, if you ask me, right? I mean, I think we've already spoken to, let's say, Singapore, some of the Middle East countries as well, and so on. So, yeah, fantastic stuff, really.
Okay, so last week there's another very interesting development by the NPCI, which kind of got the likes of PhonePe, Google Pay, and other UPI players worried. NPCI has launched a UPI plugin or a merchant SDK or a software development kit that enables online merchants to add a virtual payment address directly without the need of going through a third party like, let's say, Google Pay or PhonePe. The UPI plugin means that the payment will happen within the application itself rather than redirecting to a third party if you complete the payment and come back, which often leads to a lot of transaction failures. So it's estimated that with this SDK, the improvement of success rates will go up by 15%. Now, while the benefits for a user, it's kind of evident, in a recent interview, PhonePe co-founder and CTO Rahul Chari had a different perspective. He says the UPI plugin model does not offer any significant technical benefit. It instead shifts the onus that exists on payment apps today to sponsor bank and the merchant application, thus introducing more complexity. Now, this could probably hurt UPI leaders, but there's a lot of customers not going to these UPI apps to complete UPI payments, could take away the market share. And that is something the government has been trying to curb on like how quickly these companies have grown. So, yeah, what's your take on this?
I think it's an interesting option, nevertheless. I don't know how many of them will actually exercise that, but it's an option anyway, right? And UPI has been fabulous for the likes of Phone Pay, Google Pay, etc. It's the tip of the spear. It's how they get to access users, and it's been convenient for all of us as well, right? I mean, how many of us just use UPI on a daily basis? A lot, right? So yeah, it's an interesting option. Nevertheless, I don't think it's reason to worry really, because I think people will prefer the convenience of an app, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, right now, the market share is anyway in such a way that PhonePe has maybe 50-60% of the market, right, followed by the rest. Maybe it'll even out the market a little bit. So we'll see how it goes.